Right.
Ministers, Cathaoirleach, I'm glad to get the chance to raise this very important these issues to you tonight, to discuss and deal with the issues preventing homeowners from renting out vacant houses, and also the tax that people have to pay, up to 50% tax when they rent out a private house or a house that they want to rent out. 50% of 800 is only 400, and it's not worthwhile for many of the people that I know with these type of houses. It's not worth their while, and then they're risking the other thing, Minister, is that they can't get the tenants out when they want to get them out, and that's happening a lot, and people are afraid to actually rent their houses. And people will tell you that the RTB have too much say and too much power, and that they're in favour of the renter rather than the house owner. But it is biting the renters as well when the houses are vacant. When houses are vacant, are available to rent them. So I raised this issue back with the Taoiseach back 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago now. And these houses, I give an instance of one road that I know very well, from the top of the town in Kilmare through Kilgarvan and almost all the ways down into till within 5 miles of Killarney town. There's 55 houses. You can get on the bus is passing every half an hour almost, and there's transport available, and they're there, but they're closed down. No one wants to rent them out because of the two issues that I've said to you. And we must do everything. There's so much talk about housing here inside since I came up here in 2016 that if every word that was spoken was a concrete block, we'd have hundreds of houses built around the country, and there'd be no problem because there'd be more houses than what was needed. We must do everything, and when you consider that these houses are vacant, they're fine houses. And the other thing then is this Creek grant is a great grant, but it takes too long to administer, and there's too many loops and hoops to go through and to get over. And first of all, I want to thank the people that are administrating it in Kerry County Council, great girls, and they're doing their level best. But it takes up to 2 years, and many people are shying away from availing of the grant because the time frame should be made much quicker. And I'm asking to do something to incentivise householders to rent out their houses. Something like the 800 tax-free that was given to the Ukraine people, and I didn't realise until lately that the government is actually paying the 800. And I'm not asking for that at all even. And I do want people to be seen after, but what I'm asking is that the house owners would get 800 tax-free. There's another thing there, 14,000 for those who rent a room in cities or whatever. That should be expanded. So a scheme like that allow people not to have to pay the tax, or to get some help so that they would rent the houses, because paying 50% back, these houses are not in, how to say, populated areas, but that'd be grand. And they could be grand if the house owners got help tax-wise, or some incentive to help them to go down the road of renting. And you see, if we got them at it, they'd stay at it. But there's so much sour grapes about not being able to get people out of their houses when they want to get them out, and the tax they'd have to pay, they're not bothering to rent them out at all.
All right.
Thank you, Cathaoirleach. And again, just to thank Deputy Healy-Rae for raising this issue. If there's a situation where there's 55 vacant homes within one town in Kerry, that's not good enough, and that's something that we absolutely need to address. I mean, there's one of the solutions. It's only on one road. I mean, it's absolutely something that we need to tackle. And we have the Creek grant. You know, that was an effort to bring more of those properties back into the rental market, but clearly we need to do more. Look, my answer here covers a lot of the situations where a house can be taken back from a tenant, and it covers some of the taxation, but obviously a lot of the taxation that you mentioned would be for the Minister for Finance, but I certainly will bring it back. I can assure the House that, as set out in the programme for government, this government remains focused on growing the supply of much-needed rental accommodation and commits to continuing its support for renters and landlords, along with tackling vacancy and dereliction with enhanced compulsory purchase order powers and an ambitious grant system. The government appreciates that a landlord may sometimes need to take back possession of their property. Where a tenancy is of less than 6 months' duration, a landlord is not required to cite a reason for any notice of termination. In general, after 6 months, the landlord must state in the notice of termination one or more of the following reasons to issue the notice of termination. The tenant has failed to comply with the obligations of the tenancy. The dwelling is no longer suited to the needs of the occupying household. The landlord intends to sell the dwelling within 9 months of the termination date. The landlord requires the dwelling for own or family member occupation. Vacant possession is required for substantial refurbishment of the dwelling, and/or the landlord intends to change the use of the dwelling. The Residence Tenancies Board, or the RTB, established as an independent statutory body under the Residential Tenancies Act 2004 to 2024, provides a tenancy dispute resolution service. In 2024, my department completed a review of the Irish rental sector. This review noted clear challenges with the current system of rental controls, while acknowledging the need to ensure the regulatory system for the rental market adequately balances the interests of the landlords and the tenants. My department requested the Housing Agency to undertake a review to assess the operation of rent controls, and it is expected that this review will be completed by the end of March 2025. The review will also consider the recommendations of the Housing Commission's relating to rent regulation. Any potential future policy options that arise from this review will be considered by the Government. The Minister for Finance has responsibility for taxation measures, but recent tax measures have been for benefit to the sector. The amount of tax deductible pre-letting expenditure was doubled to 10,000 in respect of a property that lay vacant for 6 months. This is reduced from 12 months. The residential premises rental income relief was introduced to benefit landlords with relief worth up to €600, and this year and rising up to €1,000 from 2026. And finally, the rent tax credit has increased from €1,000 per renter, backdated to 2024. So there are measures there I've set out. I suppose the situations where a tenancy can be ended. But you're right, we need, most of the landlords out there have perhaps 1 or 2 properties for rent. They're not making extraordinary amounts of money out of it, but at the same time it has to make sense for them to stay in the market. And that's why we have an issue. A lot of these rental properties are being sold into private ownership, and that may not necessarily be for someone who has a housing need or who's looking for a first home. So we need to do it. We need to look. We need to listen. We need to go back to the Minister for Finance and look at taxation, etc. But it's an issue, and not just in Kerry, in West Cork as well, that needs to be addressed. We need to get vacant properties back into the rental market.
Dr. Healy-Rae.
Well, Minister, I want to thank you very much for your reply, and I know about all the reasons that you've given there about how a tenant would have to leave. I know all about that, but in theory, it is very hard to get that through and to get your house back. And as I said to you about the road from Kimere through Kilgarvan and down 5 miles within Killarney, that's just one road. I believe there are hundreds of houses, when I think of them, even inside Killarney, that are idle in Marion Terrace and Brendan's Terrace and all them places inside the town of Killarney. And it's just because it's not worth their while renting the houses. And when they want them back at a certain date, a fellow went to Australia for a year, and he said he wanted his house back. He didn't get it back for 3 years when he came home. And that they shouldn't have to go through that, and that's not fair. There's so many different ways, and we're here to help each other to address the housing problem. Voids, as far as Kerry County Council and the local authority, there's too much of a cost put on the need for the amount of money that's needed to get the houses fit. Some of these houses, there was 3 of them in Kilgarvan, I raised it lately, I think with yourself. It was demanded by the department that they should take down the chimneys. There was no need in the world in it. There was people inside those houses up until a few months ago. Only paint them and do them up a bit or whatever was needed. And bed sits. Why did in 2015 or 16 he ruled out bedsits? Young people lived in them forever and a day, going back until then, and they were excluded then, or not allowed anymore. Bedsits at that time, they just had the room and came out to the top of the stairs or somewhere, and they all used the one bathroom. Now you have the facility of having an ensuite and all those kind of things. Because in all honesty, Minister, these people hardly turn inside the bed and they're out of it again. They just want a place to change their clothes and lie down for a couple of hours and get going again while they're young. And to take a lot of people off of the housing list. Those kind of things we need to address, the voids and the reason why people aren't renting out their houses. Please do that, and he'll have my support 100% to do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy Healy-Rae, and you are making some good suggestions there, and they have to be taken on board, especially if we're partaking in any reviews. But I think there has to be a question of balance here as well, a balance of the tenants' rights. I mean, we can't I suppose, overdo it in that we take away tenants' rights. They are entitled to have right of tenure, and so that they're not in precarious situations. But obviously, the regulation of landlords has to be balanced as well, in that essentially it has to be worth someone's while in order to stay in that rental sector. Otherwise, we lose all these properties to private sale, etc., for people who may not necessarily need them as their first-time home. So that 100% has to be taken into account, and you've made that point well. But in relation to the vacant houses as well, and we're going to have to make a very difficult decision here, where I know in tourism towns in my constituency, and I bet you have it too in towns in your constituency, where you'll have a whole row of houses that are completely vacant. You probably found it when you were canvassing, you were knocking on doors, and for about 10 houses in a row there was no one there. A lot of these are in Airbnbs, a lot of these are in short-term lets. We need short-term lets. Places like Kerry need short-term lets for tourism, that's 100% right. But again, we have to strike a balance there. We can't have whole streets taken up with Airbnbs, essentially, which is what has happened in some towns. So we have to find a balance there. Look, we need, whether it's through taxation, whatever measures we take, if you're telling me, and I agree with you, there are issues and that people are having difficulty in terms of renting out their properties, whether it's reviewing the Croí fund, making it, increasing the amount of grants available, that's something perhaps that could be looked at. Whatever we need to do to get these vacant properties into the rental market, we should be doing. But I want to thank you again for raising this issue.